This particular service bulletin addresses what is unfortunately a very common problem with Lexus and Toyota hybrid vehicles. And it's what they call a brake squawk or knock noise. You could also call it a honking noise. It's just a fairly loud sound that comes when you depress the brake pedal, particularly when the vehicle is stopped, and it affects all of this generation 2016 to 2022 RX450h. So this is a super session notice. So what they're talking about is Lexus already tried to fix this problem several times, and they've had multiple TSBs back in 2019 and 2021, and they still haven't really addressed the issue. They keep updating them and updating the parts and the procedure. So this is the newest TSB. Maybe they'll have a new one coming out in a year or two. Who knows? So here's the description of the problem: is a squawk or knock noise from the engine compartment when depressing or releasing the brake pedal. Let's proceed. This talks about the model years that are covered and the various repair procedures. So depending on the model year, all of them will get the brake actuator replacement and the bleed. And then the earlier models, the 16 to 18, you also need to reprogram the ECU and replace the master cylinder reservoir on those. And these are the times right here that the tech gets paid to do the job. It doesn't mean that's the actual time that it will take, but that's what they get paid. And this warranty, in most states, it's covered by the basic warranty, which is 48 months or 50,000 miles from the vehicle's in-service date. So that's from the first time the vehicle was registered, not from the date of manufacture. What's interesting here is for the vehicles that are equipped with a California certified emission control system, so I guess the ones that are sold and operated in California or other states with California style emission warranty, they actually extend the coverage to 7 years or 70,000 miles. So that's kind of cool. And then this is just information for the Mexico market. And then we will go and look at this page. So this is the previous part number for the master cylinder and the updated part number. The brake actuator itself, or the ABS ECU and actuator, it might have various part numbers. That's why you have these hash signs here. It's going to depend on your particular vehicle trim and year. They also give you the part numbers for the skid control ECU, but it says here below that the ECU should not be replaced. They just provide this part number because the ECU gets updated software in it during the repair procedure on certain models. And then they're talking about 5 to 10 bottles of brake fluid, so quite a lot of brake fluid to bleed the system, and then just some bleeder plugs and caps to cap the lines when you're removing them. You'll also need a scan tool to update the ECU and bleed the system. These hybrids are notoriously challenging to bleed. You can't just do it by pumping the brake pedal. You have to follow a certain procedure. This talks about the calibration information here. So if you hook up the scan tool, you can see what the calibration ID is in the skid control ECU. And if it's one of these older ones here, this is the newest calibration they provide. So let's get into the repair procedure. So this is what the technician is going to have to do when the vehicle is brought in with a complaint. Now, because this is a service bulletin and not a recall, they actually have to confirm the problem before doing any repair. They're not going to do it just on every vehicle that walks through the door. So first step is confirm that the condition exists. Is there a noise when we're depressing or releasing the brake pedal? Yes. Let's continue. Are there any diagnostic trouble codes stored? So if there are any, then you'll need to diagnose this as per the repair manual in relation to those trouble codes. However, if there are no codes and just a noise, we will continue to the next step. Is the vehicle a 2016 to 2018 model year? So if yes, we go to the next step. If no, we skip a few steps. So the earlier models, as I mentioned before, they will get the skid control ECU calibration update. You'll need to check the calibration ID, and if it has not been updated, you will need to update it. If it is already updated, you go to step 7. So then here they talk about flash program in the ECU with the newest calibration ID as per the table above. And then check again what model year this vehicle is. If it is a 2016 to 2018, you will replace the master cylinder reservoir assembly. If it's the newer ones, 2019 to 2022, we go to step 8. So this is where we replace the brake actuator or skid control ABS module. And that is where the noise is actually coming from. So after this, we have many pages of the repair process, and you can, if you're gonna attempt to do this yourself, you can look them up. We can kind of briefly go over it and see, but there is quite a lot of detail. They talk about bleeding down the pressure out of the system first, and then you will continue to drain the brake fluid to the minimum line, and then disconnect some of the hoses. You plug the hoses that you disconnect so that you don't get air and dirt inside there. Then you're going to disconnect the ECU connector and tape it to cover it from getting any brake fluid and dirt in there. Disconnect a bunch of lines from the ABS actuator, and then plug them with the plugs that they mention above in the parts list. Then we disconnect some more lines, and there's a whole bunch of repair procedures here. But in essence, this is all talking about how to remove and reinstall the ABS actuator. After we reconnect everything, we're going to have to bleed it. And this is quite an involved process. You have to use a scan tool to do it. And you're going to have to do it multiple times until you get all the air out of the system. So if you're doing this yourself, read this in detail so that you don't make any mistakes. And then once you do the air bleeding, keep adding the brake fluid. If the procedure fails at any point, you're going to have to restart it from the beginning. So you'll go through all of these steps. And then once the air bleed is complete, pump the brake pedal a bunch of times. Yeah, so this is just all talking about the bleeding procedure. As I mentioned, it's quite involved. It's not the old school, depress and release while opening the bleed screw. You need to use the computer for this. You can see multiple pages of the air bleeding procedure. And then after you do it, you check for any DTCs, which are the trouble codes. You clear them, disconnect the scan tool, check for brake fluid, and test drive the vehicle. And then hopefully that squawk and knocking noise is no longer present. So there you go. That's what's involved in fixing this type of noise on the RX 450h models. See you on the next episode.